Y'all silly. Verses 7 and 8 says it's the swine, and the swine, though he divide the hoof and be cloven footed, yet he cheweth not the cud. He is unclean to you. In other words, he will pollute you. He will make you foul. He will make your flesh foul. Of their flesh ye shall not eat. Now, Yah adds something here, and he continues on and says, and their carcass shall ye not touch. They are unclean to you. So in other words, he's saying, even cooking this animal, let alone eating them, will cause you to become unclean. Why? Because you have to touch his carcass to prepare him. Amen? So he instituted a little something extra here. He doesn't even want us to touch our old Porky here. But, he's happy about that. Look at him. Verses 9 through 12 says, these shall ye eat of all that are in the waters, whatsoever have fins and scales in the water, and in the seas and in the rivers, them shall ye eat. And all that have not fins and scales in the seas and in the rivers, of all that move in the waters, and of any living thing which is in the waters, they shall be an abomination unto you. They shall be an abomination unto you. Ye shall not eat of their flesh, but ye shall have their carcasses in abomination. Whatsoever have no fins nor scales in the waters, that shall be an abomination unto you. I mean, this is something that Yah really took seriously. He uses abomination 3 times in this one passage. You think he kind of meant this? He sure did. Now here it is, we see the scales, and these are fins. The fish that you eat should have both scales and fins. And there's a multitude of different types of fish that have scales and fins. And there are many that don't have scales and fins. Such as sharks and swordfish and catfish and things of the sort. Okay? Now, that means that as appetizing as this plate may look, these things are unclean to you. Not only are they unclean to you, they're an abomination. And that word abomination, let me back up for a minute. That word abomination is Sheketz, number 8263. And it literally means filth. So Yah is saying that these things are filth. It comes from a root. And you know what the root means? The root word of this word, Shekef, means to be filthy. Thought I was going to say something deep, huh? No. No, it's filth that comes from filth. In other words, this stuff is filth unto your flesh. And I mean, before I came into this way, this was some of my favorite foods. This was truly some of my favorite foods. I really had a heart for some lobster, especially this part right here, But when the first time I actually ordered a full lobster and I seen what's in here, I knew something was wrong. For any of you who had a full lobster, you open up what's in here and it's like this color. It's like a light green, It's like really gross. But when I seen that, I knew something wasn't right about this animal. Then later I found out that, if you don't kill them before you cook them, then they may kill you while you eat them.
That's right.
So that was a telltale sign as well, Like what kind of food they, folks eating it, you gotta cook it alive. Yeah, that's why every time you see see lobsters, you go to Red Lobster or someplace, you always see them in the tank because they have to cook them alive. Same thing for these fellows right here. You know, yeah, your shellfish, they truly are filth. They are bottom dwellers.
Yeah.
You know, and they are filth, and they come from filth, and they eat filth. Filth, flam, filth. You know. Verse 13, and these are they which ye shall have in abomination among the fowls. They shall not be eaten, they are an abomination. The eagle, an abomination. Hell, boy. And the ostrich, an abomination. And the osprey. Yeah. He looks real appetizing, doesn't he? Leviticus 11, 14, and 15. And the vulture, that's not the vulture actually, that's the vulture. And the kite, and after his kind, and every raven after his kind. Not that they look all that tender to begin with, but they are an abomination. Verse 16, and the owl, and the nighthawk, and the cuckoo, or cuckoo, and the hawk after his kind. And verse 17, and the little owl, and the cormorant, and the great owl. Like the little dance he done for you. Verse 18, and the swan, and the pelican, and the gier eagle. Verse 19, and the stork, and the heron, after her kind, and the lapwing, and the bat. You know what? I've never really considered until today when, the other day when I was putting this together, you know, that the bat can't really be a bird. He's like different than all the others. He's the only flying creature with teeth. And I never really thought about that. You know, the rest of them, they have beaks, right? He's the only one with teeth. I can't think of anything else that fly that actually have teeth. You know, and he doesn't look very appetizing to begin with. I think I'll just leave him alone. He's unclean. Verses 20 through 25, and the fowls that creep going on all four shall be an abomination unto you, yet these may ye eat of every flying, creeping thing that goeth upon all four, which have legs above their feet, to leap withal upon the earth. Even these of them ye may eat, the locust after his kind, and the bald locust after his kind, and the beetle after his kind, and the grasshopper after his kind. That word beetle actually speaks to another type of locust. It's not actually a beetle. Verses 23 through 25, but all the other flying, creeping things that have 4 feet shall be an abomination unto you, and for these ye shall be unclean. Whosoever touch the carcass of them shall be unclean unto even, and whosoever beareth aught of the carcass of them shall wash his clothes and be unclean until even. So the locust and the bald locust and the grasshopper and whatever the beetle thing is, you know, unclean. Verses 26 through 27, 26 through 28. The carcasses of every beast which divideth the hoof and is not cloven-footed, nor cheweth the cud, are unclean unto you. Every one that toucheth them shall be unclean. And whatsoever goeth upon his paws among all manner of beasts that go on all four, these are unclean unto you. Whosoever touch their carcass shall be unclean unto even, and he that beareth the carcass of them shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the even. They are unclean unto you. You know, so even though these are at the top of the menu in Chinese food, and you thought that was shrimp fried rice. That was not just a Fuyang patty. That was actually, we don't know what it was. But anyway, you're not to eat Felix, Tom, or Jerry. You know, they are unclean unto you. Hey. All right. Rex, you know, man's best friend, please do not eat him. He is unclean to you. He's an abomination. Don't eat Rex, okay? Verse 29, these also shall be unclean to you among the creeping things that creep upon the earth, the weasel and the mouse. In case you was wondering, the one that was playing the sax was actually a rat. He wasn't a mouse. And Spiky.
Spiky.
As appetizing as Spiky look. You know, please do not eat Spiky, okay? That's an inside joke. The Coco family, they have a pet turtle named Spiky. Verses 30 through 33, and the ferret and the chameleon and the lizard and the snail and the mole. These are unclean to you among all that creep. Whosoever doeth touch them when they be dead shall be unclean until the evening. And upon whatsoever any of them when they are dead doeth fall, it shall be unclean. Whether it be any vessel of wood or raiment or skin or sack, whatsoever vessel it be, wherein any work is done, it must be put into the water. It shall be unclean until the even, so it shall be cleansed. And every earthen vessel whereinto any of them falleth, whatsoever is in it shall be unclean, and ye shall break it. Wow. Break it. Verses 34 through 40. Of all the meat that shall be eaten, that on which such water cometh shall be unclean. And all drink that may be drunk in every such vessel shall be unclean. And everything whereupon any part of their carcass falleth shall be unclean, whether it be oven or ranges for pots, they shall be broken down. For they are unclean, and shall be unclean unto you. Nevertheless, a fountain or a pit, wherewith there is plenty of water, shall be clean. But that which toucheth their carcass shall be unclean. If any part of their carcass fall upon any sowing seed which is to be sown, it shall be clean. But if any water be put upon the seed, and any part of their carcass fall thereon, it shall be unclean unto you. And if any beast of which ye may eat die, he that toucheth the carcass thereof shall be unclean until the evening. And he that eateth of the carcass, of the effect that the word of Elohim is supposed to have on us. It's supposed to make us holy and clean. His Torah, as we read in Leviticus chapter 11, teaches us how we can keep these vessels clean. And his other teachings and instructions teaches us how to keep them holy and how to keep our hearts, man, the true man, holy. Because it doesn't matter if your vessel is holy, if your heart is unholy. Amen? Amen. You know, and that's what Yahushua come to teach us. His teachers and instructions teaches us how to make that heart right. How that heart might be holy. It was in Torah, but they didn't understand it. You know, and that's the whole point of what's going on here in Mark chapter 7. You know, Yah is not making a point of allowing people to eat any and everything that they want. You know, it's this flawed line of thinking that Yah was addressing and correcting. Now, think about this. He goes on and rebuked the Yahudim for laying aside Yah's commands, which they thought made one holy. And then he illustrates, if you follow along with what modern Christianity tells you, he then illustrates how he set aside Yah's commandments in order so that you can eat whatever you want. That doesn't even make sense. You know, he's not teaching that you can set aside Yah's commandments concerning his food laws here. You know, this is the very thing he was getting on the Yahudim about, was setting aside Yah's commandments that they might do the traditions of men. You know, and hence he quote, honor thy mother and father, and how they say Corbin, and so that they can get out of that. You know, he's not going to turn around and then push Leviticus 11 out the way and say, well, you can put these to the side, you don't have to eat this anymore. You know, in the same breath that he just got on them about laying Yah's commands to the side. That doesn't even make sense. You know, so if you really look at this thing in its proper context and think it out, it becomes clear that that was not what he was speaking to. And it did not make it okay. And it is not okay. Yah gave us his word. His word is for his people. You know, everyone don't get his word. It's for his people. His people adhere to his word.
Yeah.
And it makes them holy and clean. Well, that's all I have for you today. I pray it was a blessing unto you.
Hallelujah.
For the earth is the Adonai's and the fullness thereof. Now, he clarifies what he's saying in verse 29. Conscience, I say not thine own. He's not speaking about your conscience. He's speaking about, but of the other, of the one who told you that it is sacrificed unto idols. For this is my liberty, judged of. For why is my liberty judged of another man's conscience? Now he's anticipating the question that comes to someone's mind, you know, as to why you're going out of the way for someone else's conscience. And of course, it's so that you might eventually lead them onto the way that leadeth unto eternal life. But if they see you acting and doing things as a hypocrite, they're not going to want to follow your example. Amen? Now, even though you won't be hypocritical in your heart and mind, within their heart and mind as to what they understand, you would be. Because they're telling you that, hey, this is sacrificed unto idols. You know, and he goes through the spiel about, you know, what is an idol is nothing, you know, and you know, there's no El but Yah's, and everything, you know, is Yah's, you know, the fullness thereof. The earth is Adonai's and the fullness thereof, you know. So anything sacrificed to an idol is really nothing. You know, it's not like they putting anything in the meat. It's still the same meat. You know, that's what he's getting at. You know, he's not so much as speaking to, yeah, you can eat whatever you want. He's just speaking to this problem that they had amongst the Gentiles of not going to the marketplace, not wanting to eat meat because they were in fear that it was sacrificed to idols. And hence he says, conscience, I say not thine own, but of the other. For why is my liberty judged of another man's conscience? And of course, as I previously stated, it's so that we can set a good example before them and not become a stumbling block unto them, lest they seek to follow the way that leadeth unto life as well. So, again, Paul isn't speaking or teaching that one could eat whatever they want. That's not what this passage is dealing with at all. You know, if we look at the entire passage, we see it's speaking of things offered unto idols and sacrificed unto devils. You know, hence he says, but I say the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice the devils, not the Elohim, and I would not have ye, I would not that ye should have fellowship with devils. You cannot drink of the cup of Adonai and the cup of devils. You know, he's totally against, you know, you serving other elves, you know, and eating things that was actually sacrificed to him if you know it, you know. But ultimately, we all know that everything is YAH'S, you know, and what he said is clean no matter what anybody say about it or say over it. Because Yah made the animals that's clean, intrinsically clean. And the final example that we're going to deal with is actually from the Messiah himself, in which many people use to say that it's okay to eat whatever you want. And this is comes from Mark 7:14 through 18. Can I have my next reader read Mark 7:14 through 18?
And when he had called all the people unto him, he said unto them, Hearken unto me every one of you, and understand. There is nothing from without a man that enter him can defile him, but the things which come out of him, those are they that defile the man. If any man if any man have ears to hear, let him hear. And when he was entering into the house from the people, his disciples asked him concerning the parable. And he said unto them, Are ye so without understanding also? Do ye not perceive that whatsoever thing from without enter into the man, it cannot defile him?
Okay, now, this word defiled, which occurs 3 times in this passage, is koinu, which is very similar to the koinos that was in Acts chapter 10. You know, in fact, you know, one is the root of the other. And one comes from the other, and the other is number 2839. So the koinos, or koinos, is 2839, and this is 2840. And they both mean to make common, to profane. It speaks to being unholy. So again, even with Yahshua's saying, there is nothing from without man that entering in him can defile him. But the things which come out of him, those things, they that defile the man. You know, he's not talking about, again, he's not speaking about you can eat whatever you want to eat. This is not the subject of this passage. You know, this is not what they're dealing, this is not the issue that's being dealt with here. You know, and even though on the surface it does look like he's saying, you know, that you can eat whatever you want because it's not going to defile you. You know, it looks like, you know, yeah, well, he's saying it right there. I can eat whatever I like. You know, it's not going to defile me. The reason that the food laws was given, as we went over in Leviticus 11, isn't because there are foods that will make you unholy. It's because they will make you unclean. And what he's talking about here is one becoming unholy. One becoming common. Where you were to be set apart, i.e. uncommon, holy, which is something that's uncommon. He's saying, you know, what you eat won't make you common. It won't make you unholy. He's not saying anything against what Leviticus 11 has taught us. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Preferably, we're going to take a look at some earlier parts of this passage to get the context in which he's saying this. Because again, you know, when you just take something out of the middle, you know, without getting the proper context, you can come up with all kind of strange doctrines. But here it is, he used this word 3 times. This word is used 3 times in this passage to let us know emphatically that he's not speaking of something making you unclean. Rather, he's speaking of not being made unholy. The foods that you eat cause you to become unclean, filthy. They don't cause you to become unholy. Holiness is is a matter of the heart. Whereas he's going to teach. Mark 7:19-23, he says, because it entereth not into his heart, but into the belly, and goeth out into the draught, purging all meats. And he said, that which cometh out of man, that defileth the man. And again, this word defileth is koinu, meaning to make him common. That which cometh out of the man makes him unholy. For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, and evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. And all these evil things come within and defile, make unholy the man. Okay, so again, you look at this passage in and of itself, and you can use it as an excuse, to eat whatever you like. But that is not what this passage is teaching. And that word defile doesn't have anything to do with the reason why the food laws was given, which is to keep you clean. This is dealing with one becoming unholy. And what Yah is saying is that the food don't make you unholy. It's your heart which makes you unholy. That which cometh out of man, that maketh the man unholy. Because that which cometh out of the heart of man proceed evil thoughts. Don't you know, if you just sitting and you're thinking evil thoughts, you're thinking ill of someone, just the evil thoughts in and of themselves can cause you to become unholy. Adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye. Just because you don't like somebody. What they say, you hating on them. That can cause you to become unholy. Stop hating on them. Blasphemy, pride. Just because you're full of yourself. That can cause you to become unholy. And any fool know, being a fool can cause you to become unholy. To properly understand the issue that Yah was addressing within this passage, we have to go to the beginning of the chapter to see the context in which it is stated. And when we go to the beginning of the chapter, what we learn in verses 1-5 is that it says, then came together unto him the Pharisees and certain other scribes which came from Jerusalem. And when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is to say, with unwashed hands, they found fault. Now, this word defiled is koinos, the same as the one in Acts chapter 10, number 28-39, meaning common, unholy, profane. So he's saying that when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with unholy hands, that is to say, with unwashed hands, they found fault. Because they thought that because of the things, these rituals, these traditions of men that they kept, is what made them holy.
Right.
They were convinced that we do all this, washing of hands and this, that, and the other, and whatever other traditions, because they make us holy. That's what sets us apart.
Wow.
Not understanding that only what Yah says to do sets us apart.
Right.
Not what man says.
That's right.
Verses 3 through 5, for the Pharisees and all the Yahudim, except they wash their hands often, eat not, holding the tradition of the elders. See, this was a tradition of the elders. And when they came from the market, except they wash, they eat not. And many other things there be, which they have received to hold as the washing of cups and pots, brazen vessels, and of tables. Then the Pharisees and the scribes asked him, why walk not thy disciples according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands? See, we have to understand that Yah is addressing the Yahudim's flawed line of thinking, which is that their traditional practices is what sets them apart unto Yah. They had the flawed line of thinking that because they do all these traditions of men, that those traditions were making them holy. They were setting them apart unto Yah. And they were not. In fact, if you continue along the text, Yah goes on to rebuke them because of their traditions, because they allow their traditions to make the word of Elohim of no effect. Yeah. But what effect is the word of Elohim to have on a person? The effect that the word of Elohim is to have on a person is that it's supposed to make them kodesh, holy.
Yeah.
That's, yes. The Gentiles were unclean. But now through Yahshua they are made clean. And now that they are clean, we are not to call them common, that is speaking to unholy. And that's what they're talking about here. Now take note that Elohim didn't say what Elohim have made holy. Because food don't make you holy. It make you unclean. It make you clean or unclean. It doesn't make you holy. Now this was contrary to what the Yahudim believed. They believed that foods could make you unholy. But that's not what Torah teaches. As we went through each and every one of these foods in Leviticus 11, not one of them said that they would make a person unholy. It said they will make them unclean, and that they will be an abomination and make them abominable, i.e. filthy. Which is something totally different from being holy. Holy means set apart for a particular purpose. And if you're holy unto Yah, then you're set apart for His purpose. And His purpose only. That's what holy means. What's the most holiest thing in your house? The toilet brush. Absolutely. So if you ever have a discrepancy or misunderstanding as to what holy means, just think of the toilet brush in your house. Because it's set apart for one purpose and one purpose only. You're not going to use that toilet brush to wash windows. You're not going to use that toilet brush to clean out the sink or the tub. You're going to use that toilet brush for one purpose and one purpose only. I hope. It is set apart just for cleaning the toilet. And that's the epitome of the definition of holy. And those of us who become holy unto Yah are those of us who become set apart for His purpose and His purpose only. A saying that I've coined the other day, Yah blessed me with, is there's only two reasons. Let me repeat that. There's only two good reasons for which you should do something. The first good reason is because Yah asked you to. And the second is because you want to be pleasing to Yah. Them are the only two good reasons to do anything. Now you can find all kind of reasons to do stuff, but them are the only two good reasons. Now, so you see, Yah was making a point to let keepers know that He has cleansed the Gentiles and that they are not to be considered unholy. And of course, we know that he backed it up even with baptizing them in the Ruach. Amen?
Yeah.
You know, so this passage had nothing to do with eating food. So this is not a proof text that you can eat whatever you like. You know, Yah does not contradict himself.
That's right.
All right, now that was an example from Cephas, who was the head of the ecclesia. Amen. Now we're going to take a look at an example from that modern Christianity utilizes from Apostle Paul, who was the head apostle to the Gentiles. As if there was a double standard. There was not. There's to be one Torah, both for he or she that was born of Israel as well as the stranger. Amen?
Amen.
Let me have my next reader read 1 Corinthians 10, 26 through 33.
For the earth is the atomized, and the fullness thereof. If any of them that believe not bid you a feast, and ye be disposed to go, whatsoever is set before you, eat, asking no question for conscience sake. But if any man say unto you, this is offered in sacrifice unto idols, eat not for his sake that showed it, and for conscience sake. For the earth is YAH'S, and the fullness thereof. Conscience I say, not thine own, but of the other. For is my liberty judged of another man's conscience? For if I by grace be a partaker, why am I evil spoken of that for which I give thanks? Whether therefore ye eat or drink, or whatsoever ye do all to the glory of Elohim. Give none offense, neither to the Jews nor to the Gentiles, nor to the church of Elohim. Even as I please all men in all things, not seeking mine own profit, but the profit of many, that they may be saved.
Okay. We see here in verse 27, it says, if any of them that believe not bid you to a feast, and ye be disposed to go, whatsoever is set before you, eat, asking no question for conscience sake. Verse 28. But if any man say unto you, this is offered in sacrifice unto idols, eat not for his sake, and that showed it, and for conscience sake, for the earth is YAH'S and the fullness thereof. Conscience I say not thy own, but of the other, for why is my liberty judged of another man's conscience? For if by grace be a partaker, why am I evil spoken of, for which I give thanks? I gave thanks for it. Whether therefore ye eat or drink, whatsoever ye do all to the glory of Elohim. So you see, you can eat whatever you want, as long as you give thanks. This is what they tell us. You can eat or drink whatever you want, as long as it's to the glory of Elohim, as long as you give thanks. Now, to properly understand the point that Paul was trying to get across, which was not that one can eat any and everything that they choose, for this contradicts Torah, which Paul would never do. But one must back up to get the context in which the passage is getting if we're to understand the passage. See, and this is something that many people do in trying to prove their point. They just take a passage out of context and they just read a part of it to you. And yeah, sometimes when you read these things, it does sound like that. It does sound like it's coming from that point of view. But the only way to really be sure is to get the full context of the passage. Now, if we back up a bit, we'll see in 1 Corinthians 10, 15 through 22, Paul says, I speak to wise men. Judge ye what I say. I speak as to wise men. So, first of all, he called himself speaking to those who are as wise men. Now, many ignorant men read these passages and conclude something other than what Apostle Paul was trying to say. They shouldn't be reading it no way, because only wrote it to the wise. But that being said, verse 16 says, the cup of the blessing which we bless is not the communion of the blood of Messiah. The cup of the blessing which we bless, is it not the communion of the blood of Messiah? The bread which we break, is it not the communion of the body of Messiah? For we being many are one bread and one body, for we are all partakers of that one bread. Behold, Israel after the flesh are not they which eat of the sacrifices, partakers of the altar. What say I then? That the idol is anything, or that which is offered in sacrifice to idols is anything. But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils, and not to Elohim. And I would not that ye should have fellowship with devils. Ye cannot drink the cup of Adonai and the cup of devils. Ye cannot be partakers of Adonai's table and the table of devils. Do we provoke the Adonai to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? Of course we are not. That's why we don't do that. Amen?
Right.
But hereby we learn that Apostle Paul is dealing with the issue of things sacrificed unto devils or sacrificed unto pagan gods. You know, this is the crux of the matter in this passage. This is the subject in which he's dealing with. He's dealing with things that are sacrificed to devils or gods or idols. In 1 Corinthians 10, 23 and 24, he goes on to say, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but all things edify not. Let no man seek his own, but every man another's wealth. The King James adds wealth here, but as you can see, it's grayed out because it does not exist. The translators took liberty to put it there. And errantly so, I might add, for Apostle Paul isn't speaking of wealth. He's rather speaking of conscience, even as he's about to illustrate in the following verses. If we take a look at verse 25, it says, whatsoever is sold in the shambles, that eat, asking no question for conscience sake. This word shambles is Makellen, number 3111, meaning a butcher shop, a meat market. He's saying, whatever's in the meat market, eat. Buy and eat. Don't worry about if it was sacrificed to devils or idols. See, there was a problem that was existing back in that time, whereas when the saints, especially those of the Gentiles, when they would go to the marketplace, they didn't want to buy any meat and feared that it was sacrificed to idols. And Paul is saying, don't let that bother you. Don't let your conscience be seared as to whether or not this meat in the marketplace was sacrificed to idols or not. You know, buy your meat and eat it. This is what he's saying. Now, he goes on in verse 27. It says, if any of them that believe not bid you to a feast. So now here it is, because this is how this problem was perpetuated. You know, many of the people who was really trying to be Kodesh and clean. They was trying to be clean and holy. You know, they wouldn't even buy the meat from the market. And then if they were invited out, you know, and they had meat that they normally could eat, they wouldn't eat it because they figured it may be sacrificed to other gods or devils. This was the problem that they were dealing with. This is the problem that Apostle Paul is addressing. Hence he says, if any of them that believe not, you know, you just have some of your friends, you know, that's, you know, some of your happy heathen friends, you know, or some of your happy heathen family, you know, that bid you to a feast, and you be disposed to go, you feel like it's something that you want to go, you feel like you should go, then whatever's set before you, eat, asking no questions for conscience sake. Now, when he says, whatsoever is set before you, eat, he's speaking in conjunction with Torah. He's not speaking of foods that is against Torah or foods that's against the will of Elohim for your life. He's speaking about that which Yah has allowed, that which is not filthy unto you, that which will not make you unclean. You know, if they set it before you, eat, not having your conscience seared as to whether or not it was offered to idols. Hence he says in verse 28, but if any man say unto you, this is offered in sacrifice unto idols, then eat not for his sake that showed it, and for conscience sake. Beloved shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. He also that beareth the carcass of it shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. Verses 41 through 47, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth shall be an abomination, that is filth, it shall not be eaten. Whatsoever goeth upon the belly, and whatsoever goeth upon all four, and whatsoever have more feet among all creeping things that creep upon the earth, them ye shall not eat, for they are an abomination. Ye shall not make yourselves abominable, filthy, with any creeping thing that creepeth, neither shall ye make yourselves unclean with them, that ye should not be defiled thereby. For I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. Ye shall therefore sanctify yourselves, and ye shall be holy, Kodesh, for I am holy, or Kodesh. Neither shall ye defile yourselves with any manner of creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, for I am Yahuwah that bringeth you up out of the land of Mizraim to be your Elohim. Ye shall therefore be Kodesh, for I am Kodesh. This is the law of the beast, of the fowl, and of every living creature that moveth in the waters, and of every creature and every creeper that creepeth upon the earth, to make a difference between unclean and the clean, and between the beast that may be eaten and the beast that may not be eaten. So, you know, this is a very essential aspect of Torah that a lot of people overlook and don't understand, especially in modern day Christianity. They don't understand why they need Torah. Torah is needed because it does teach us the difference betwixt clean and unclean. It teaches us the difference betwixt holy and profane. And seeing that we make up the temple of Elohim, we ought to also consider that Elohim will not dwell in an unclean temple. And if you don't know how the temple become unclean, or how to get it back clean, or if you don't know how the temple become unholy, or how to keep it holy, then you're kind of in trouble. You're at a loss. But with Torah, we are not. Torah teaches us how we can remain clean and holy. Amen?
Amen.
Now that is the end of Leviticus chapter 11. But I felt compelled to speak concerning some of the arguments against chapter 11 that's presented by modern day Christianity. Now, many modern day Christians would tell you that these food laws are done away with. And they even utilize scripture to try to back it up and say, we're going to take a look. That said, we're going to take a look at some of their so-called proof texts and see how they hold up to scrutiny. First one we're going to deal with is Cephas, or Peter, and his vision of the sheets. Let me have my first reader read Acts 10, verses 9 through 14.
On the morrow, as they went on their journey and drew nigh unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the sixth hour. And he became very hungry and would have eaten, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance, and saw heaven opened, and a certain vessel descending unto him, as it had been a great sheet knit at four corners, and let down to the earth, wherein were all manner of four-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air. And there came a voice to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, Not so, Adonai, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean.
Okay. Here it is. We have keepers. You know, he's at the house. You know, he's praying, and all of a sudden he becomes really hungry, and he would have eaten, but before he could go get something to eat, he falls into a trance, and he see this vision. You see the heavens open up and a certain vessel descending unto him, as it had been a great sheet knit at four corners and let down to the earth, wherein all manner of four-footed beasts of the earth and wild beasts and creeping things and fowls of the air. And there came a voice to him, Rise, keepers, kill and eat. And keeper says, Really? Not so, Adonai. I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. Now, we continue on with this story. I thought I defined that word. Wow. Wait, maybe I did. Acts 10:15 through 20. My next reader, please.
And the voice spake unto him the second time, What Elohim has cleansed, thou call not thou common. This was done thrice, and the vessel was received up again into the heaven. Now while Peter doubted himself what this vision which he had seen should mean, behold, the men which were sent from Cornelius had made inquiry for Simon's house, and stood before the gate, and called and asked whether Simon, which was surnamed Peter, were lodged there. While Peter thought on the vision, the Spirit said unto him, Behold, 3 men seek thee. Arise therefore, and get thee down, and go with them, doubting nothing, for I have sent them. And he said unto them, Ye know how that it is unlawful, it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come into one of another nation. But Elohim has shewed me that I should not call any man common or unclean.
Okay. Now, here it is. We see Yah responding, or the Ruach HaKodesh responding, saying, What Elohim have cleansed, that call not thou common. And this was done 3 times. And even after the 3rd time, Peter was still doubting in himself, as to what this vision which he had seen should mean. Now, if he was still doubting in himself, obviously he wasn't convinced that Yah wanted him to go and eat all these unclean animals. But as he thought on it, the Ruach said unto him, Behold, 3 men seek thee. He had seen the vision 3 times, and 3 men saw it. Anybody see the connection? And the Ruach also tells him, Arise, therefore, and get thee down, and go with them, doubting nothing, for I have sent them. So, in other words, the Spirit is telling them that each one of these sheets you've seen with these unclean animals descending to you was actually a prophetic picture of Gentiles coming to you. It happened 3 times because there was 3 Gentiles that was coming to him. There was 5 Gentiles, it probably would have happened 5 times. And just to acknowledge that this was the understanding, we read in Acts 10:28, Keepers himself saying, And he said unto them, Ye know how that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Yahudim to keep company or come unto one of another nation. He's telling them, ye know because it was common knowledge. Everybody knew that they were not to fellowship or even come into company. Well, they wasn't even to talk to the Gentiles. Hence, they were surprised when the Messiah was speaking to the Samaritan woman. You know, this was the custom of the Yahudim. Hence, the Ruach HaKodesh having to prepare Kephas and let them know ahead of time that it was of him, that it was of Yah by which these guys came. Because there's no way in the world that Kephas would have left with him. He wouldn't even have spoken with them, because that was their custom. You know, so Yah went through a lot of trouble to get Kephas to understand that he was to go with him. And Kephas, even though he was a little slow, he did catch the point. Hence he says, but Elohim have showed me that I should not call any man common or unclean. Notice, he did not say, but Elohim showed me that I can eat anything that I want.
Right.
That is not the subject of this passage.
Right.
Nor is it the point of this passage.
Right.
This had nothing to do with eating. It had everything to do with the Gentiles coming unto Kephas.
Yeah.
That's what this passage is about. It's not I can eat lobster card. You know, it's not I can enjoy pork chop. No, that's not what this is about. And even though many people use this as a proof text to say that you can eat whatever you want, that is not what's going on here. I'm gonna have to back up because I thought for sure I defined that word common, but actually I don't see it in here. But I know I did, but where is that? I don't know. But anyway, I don't remember the Greek word for common. Yes, I do. It's koinos. 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 All right, that's the word that's used here for common. And common, in case you're wondering, is the opposite of holy. All this is saying, all Kephas is saying is, not so, Adonai, have not eaten anything that is unholy or unclean. Now, we just went over Leviticus 11, which taught us what was clean and what was unclean, right?
Right.
So we know about that, and that dealt with food, right?
Right.
But here Kephas is speaking to, he's saying, you know, he's never eaten anything that is unholy or unclean. Now, as we went through Leviticus 11, which one of those foods did it say would cause you to be unholy? Pop quiz.
All of them.
No, not a one. It said unclean. Absolutely. It said that these foods are unclean to you. And it even used the word abomination, which meant what? Filthy. So those foods will make you filthy. They will make you unclean. They will not make you unholy. See, there's a difference.
Yeah.
And when you take a look at what the Ruach said, the Ruach said, what Elohim hath cleansed, that call not thou common. Okay, so now we're speaking